right. Okay, so hopefully you digested the analytics talk from before and you're ready to talk about Inhabit and Arena. This is probably a shorter talk, but it's really trying to think about these two products, maybe within the framework of lean analytics and lean development. So again, it's this iterative process, building, ideating, learning, building. Our analytics go here. So we've talked about this. A good metric is understandable. It's a ratio or a rate. It's comparative, and it should change our behavior. And the hero metric would be quantitative, reporting, leading, and causal. Let's see if we can find those. But so based on the concept that any product exists somewhere along this set of stages, a product that's like really stable that everybody knows, like I don't know what is a product that everybody knows, Coca-Cola or whatever, is definitely at the scale stage. People like it. People who drink Coca-Cola seem to keep drinking it. They know how to make revenue from it, and now they're just using, everybody in the world is drinking Coca-Cola. Other newer products are earlier stages. Like, is this worth doing at all? Where would you say the arena is? Let's say arena games. So because our responsibility is making arena games.
Games are in revenue.
Somewhere in revenue.
And one step to scale.
One step to scale.
I think stickiness, maybe.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. I think I put it here, and I think it's absolutely worth talking about. But I think there are aspects of our games that we really are looking at stickiness. We know that people want to play games. We know they're looking to spend time. We don't fully understand for some people, we're solving a problem of wasted, time that they just want to spend. Some people they're trying to keep their brain healthy, but that exists. We've solved that. In some ways, we're looking at whether people stick around, and at some point, we're trying to solve the revenue issue. How do we generate revenue from new games? How do we generate more revenue from a new game than from an old game? What about Inhabit? What did you say?
It's in empathy with a little bit into stickiness. Just a little.
Yeah, I definitely think we're still at this phase of empathy. Is this a poorly met need that that a reachable market faces? We're not really. I wonder about Inhabit. Inhabit is hard to define because it has 3 customers. So it has, one of the customers is the publisher, so like Slam Online or USA Today Sports. One customer is the end user, the sports fan who's engaging with it, and one end user is the brand. Since that is the strategy we believe we're following with this, is we're generating revenue from Nike, who wants to market using our product. So we sort of have to move through these stages from each of these customers' points of view. But I think in a lot of cases, I would say we're just at empathy. So let's talk about Arena. One metric for Arena games, right? So this is sort of complicated, right? So what we're looking for something that's like stickiness and revenue. That's the thing we want to be testing and pushing. So a metric is understandable. There are lots of different understandable metrics related to arena games. So it's like, we can track users, we can track revenue, we can track starts, times, ad impressions. We're looking for a ratio or a rate. So it can't just be number of users. It should be per. So starts per day, starts per user, starts per month, time per day, time per user. You get all sorts of ratios and rates. We should be able to compare it. So this is the way we would use this, is we should compare users per day by age, and we would learn something. So it has to be comparable. Any thoughts on what the right one metric for arena games?
Revenue per month by arena.
Yeah, well, by yeah, so really we're after a value that is like long-term revenue per user. So it's something that captures this concept of retention, and it has to be per user because we're really interested in that. So the metric we use is modeled revenue per user per month. So like almost exactly what you're saying. So that's the really one of the best metrics. If we as a team are thinking about what to optimize or what to improve, I think this would be a really good one to focus on. We've never talked about this, a current line in the sand for this metric. And I was looking at it a lot using some of Michael's dashboards, and I think it's greater than 7 cents. So that's like the almost sort of the minimum that we want to hit. Bridge is crushing it. Outspell, I mean, this is just giving you sort of an example of where things are standing. Canfield, Pool, 5-roll, Mathoku.
That last one is unexpected.
Yeah. Oh, it is unexpected?
Yeah, I thought it would be worse.
Yeah, I was surprised it was doing better than I had expected. Blackjack really is not doing that well yet. So, I mean, we'll see how these things do.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is it possible to define this line before we start developing the game?
What we want to achieve. Yeah, well, we have never talked about even a concept that there's a line of the sand. Partially that's just my learning and thinking about analytics, and partially is like talking to you all. Yeah, we've never really talked about this, but I think that we should be, when we start new games, thinking a bit about revenue per user per month and what we imagine we could achieve. So some confounding metrics. So confounding means like, if we're really focused on revenue per user per month, there are actually some other values we need to know because they can have a major impact on this metric. One of these that's interesting is new users per day. So in a situation where we are promoting, let's say, Bridge. Now, Bridge has a really good numbers of users, revenue per user per day, but let's assume we promote it to 100 million new users show up, next week and start playing Bridge. What's that going to do to the revenue per user per month?
Most likely decrease it.
Yeah, almost certainly drive it way down because there are a lot of new users. A lot of people won't actually like the game. They just is not their game. Like probably you're promoting it in places where it makes no sense to get that many users. So you have to, and then the opposite side is if a game has no new users and has not had new users for a year and it still has only, this same number of users, those users are the most dedicated users you could possibly get. So a number like revenue per user per month would be much higher than it would under other conditions. So you actually have to know whether there is a change in new users per day to know if this, is this value comparable between these two games. Because if one game is getting a ton of new users per day, I think about this for Klondike Solitaire. If a game has really high SEO, search engine optimization, so it's getting a lot of new users, versus a game like Bridge, which really does, I think it's on Arcadium.com, it's possible that it will look like Klondike is worse, even though in reality Klondike is like fine, maybe. Returning users per day. So this is the opposite of basically new users. So if you have a lot of returning users, if almost everybody is returning, it means almost everybody knows what this game is, likes this game, and that's like a good sign. Seasonality is important to know. In general, people play fewer games in the summer. Now here's another really important factor for us to think about. Do you guys know the term cannibalization? Do you know what a cannibal is? Did you say it? It's someone who eats eats someone else, right? It's an animal that eats its own kind. So if a human eats humans, they'd be cannibals. But you could say if an ape eats an ape, it can be a cannibal ape.
What's the game industry?
What?
Cannibalization in the real world, yes, exactly. But in the game,
From our standpoint, what it means is, when I use the term cannibalization of gameplays, I mean that it's really just saying if we have 100 users and they're playing Klondike Solitaire, and then we release Canfield Solitaire, and all we do is we split it in half, and now we have 50 users playing Klondike and 50 users playing Canfield, I would call this like complete cannibalization of our traffic, because it's the same users just split differently. Like, we have generated no additional value out of releasing Canfield Solitaire. Possibly.
It's not as bad because cannibalization never really reaches 100%.
Oh, we sure hope not, right? We hope we're not there are all sorts of reasons. Canfield Solitaire could have a better revenue per user metric, so 50 people moving over to play Canfield instead of Klondike could be valuable. Canfield has a different SEO, like search engine name, so people searching for Canfield can find it, so maybe new users show up. There are all sorts of, maybe there are reasons to believe that when we release a new game, there is like global positive impact. But we do have to be aware that cannibalization can happen. So even releasing a game with good revenue per user per month statistics can sometimes still not mean that we have released something successful, because it could just cannibalize our existing traffic.
in this case, I think we have to be careful because Klondike Solitaire users may be very specific, and if we move it, half of this user move to Canfield Solitaire, we can lost of, for example, 25% of these moving players, because Canfield Solitaire doesn't good instant of Klondike for these people.
Sure. I mean, I guess there's a fear if we force people to move from Klondike to Canfield, then there's a huge chance that they'll be unhappy and leave. But I think in general, we always add an additional, it's intended to be augment. If you like Klondike, go play Klondike. You don't have to stop. But if you like Canfield, you can come play Canfield. But we just have to be aware that even if we as a team are constantly releasing games with good revenue per user per month metrics, if we're not paying attention to the cannibalization, we could still be wasting our time. We could still not be driving new value.
What we have to do with this?
What?
What we have to do with cannibalization? How we can promote our new game without cannibalization?
Yeah. It's tough. I think so some things we do to avoid cannibalization. Like one, we want to generally be releasing new kinds of games, because if you're releasing new kinds of games, the hope is that is that users who show up on our main site who would normally leave will instead stay because they notice that, oh, you have a pool game. I was looking for a pool game. If you don't have a pool game, I want to go somewhere else. But because you do, I'll play this game. So that's like new value that's been generated by having new kinds of games in our arena. The other thing that we have to do is make sure that whatever, I think we've made a lot of, we'll look at solitaire games. But the hope with solitaire games is to watch SEO. And my hope is that when we release Canfield, people search for Canfield and will come to our site, like new people who would never have heard of our site will come to our site because we have this game as opposed to, that we didn't have before. But we need to look at that, and we don't have good data there, which is really tough. I don't have good data about where search engine traffic comes to different games. I think that's one of the metrics we're waiting for. But this is a list. I'm not going to go in this. This is a chart that is on Michael's dashboard. Here is our monthly revenue. Revenue per user per month. The top game is actually Bubble Mouse. Do you guys know what Bubble Mouse is? No. Bubble Mouse is a flash bubble shooter made by Mask Games. So they're a company that made Letter Garden. It is not heavily promoted, so this game has very low new users, but it has a huge amount of dedicated users, like clearly really love it and keep coming back. And we were looking at this when we chose to make Bubble Dragons, which is it's on one of these. Maybe it's not. It's off the bottom here somewhere. So we clearly did not succeed. But Bubble Mouse is level-based. So then obviously you see Bridge, Word Wipe. This is you guys can hardly see it here, but we actually have 2 Mahjong candies. Where's the other Mahjong candy? Yeah, Mahjong candy. But this is, so when you're looking at this, you can also see the total starts and the total revenue, and it sort of highlights that this Mahjong candy is not the real Mahjong candy, because it has really low starts and plays. I don't know, it's like one version of Mahjong Candy on some site. Outspell, again, 5-roll exists in multiple, I think this is actually Flash 5-roll. So it exists only on one site somewhere. Canfield Solitaire.
You can tell me which site it is. ARP, of course.
It's ARP? Oh, okay. Golf Solitaire, Backgammon Multiplayer, interesting. And then on this side, this is just the same list with only our HTML5 games. But one thing you'll see that's interesting is a bunch of our solitaires are up here. Crescent Solitaire, Canfield Solitaire, Golf Solitaire, Sweet Shuffle, the Match 3 game, is up in the top 10. Addiction Solitaire. So when we're looking, so this is kind of interesting. This is just our solitaire games.
Canfield, which is supposed to be the hardest one of them all, is on top by revenue per user.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
So if you look at this, what you're seeing is that in terms of total revenue, Klondike is by far our biggest game. It's making the most total revenue, followed by Spider Solitaire, followed by Free Cell. But of the users, so this is a situation, is even if we're cannibalizing our Klondike players, but if we're moving them to become Canfield players, we're actually generating additional revenue because Canfield is a stickier game and people play it more.
It says me if Canfield Solitaire will be on arenas like Klondike during 4 or 3 or 2 years, Canfield Solitaire makes money for Arcadium more than
It could. It could. There's a different thing to think about, which is like attraction. So people, this probably is, again, this probably is hurt by having a lot of new users. It also has a lot of competition between other Klondike solitaires in the, across the web and on people's mobile phones, whereas people have fewer options in terms of Canfield solitaire. This is an interesting thing to look at. It also implies that our new layout, the design you guys are using for Canfield, that has existed in these guys and 40 Thieves and Addiction, but we never fixed Tri-Peaks and Pyramid and Free Cell. Maybe there's a value in trying to go back and improve those, because the new engine you guys are using is much better, seems like it's better than what we had before.
Tom,
Yeah.
does total revenue of solitaires bigger than total revenue of crosswords?
Total revenue of what? Of solitaires?
Solitaires.
It's a good, have I looked at that? I don't think so. I think total revenue of crosswords is bigger than the total revenue of solitaires. Although I think I might even have that. I think we might, well, let's keep going and I will see if I can get it. So this is a different way to look at cannibalization, and it's not, I don't know the right way to fully look at cannibalization. But one thing to think about is these are all of the solitaires over, and these is like per week. This is the total revenue generated or modeled revenue generated by these solitaires. And what we're seeing is that generally it's going up, which is good. And we're seeing these new games showing up in here. So like 40 Thieves shows up in here. Which one's this? Golf Solitaire shows up here. So they're adding like little incremental value. But I think there is some cannibalization. The total amount of plays of, what is this, of Golf Solitaire, or the addition of 40 Thieves, I don't think it feels like that's just getting added on top. It looks like, so for example, Addiction Solitaire was bigger and is actually getting squeezed. Maybe some users who were playing Addiction are moving to play some of the other ones. I don't know. It could also be about promotion. But this is one way to look at a category of games. Is there cannibalization? Is there additional value? And then here is just how are people playing? What's the percentage of play of these different kinds of games? This is the same thing. This is revenue. Oh, I know. This is modeled revenue. I don't know. I think I might have pulled the same things. Oh, game starts. Okay, no, this is the total number of users. So a different way to think about cannibalization is around, or to see it, I think, more clearly, is to focus on the number of users, because what you're really worried about is are users moving away from one game and playing a different game. When we're looking at this previous slide, which is all about revenue, you see how it kind of goes up? It generally feels like it's going up. It feels like a good thing. Now let's look at the same stuff, but this is just the total number of users. It actually sort of flattens and actually shrinks a little bit in terms of the total number of users playing solitaire games. So what do you think we're seeing?
Well, apparently they finally learned how to play it. And we stopped getting more new ones.
You stop getting more users. So this actually plays back into this initial thing. What we noticed here was that these new games we've launched generate significantly more revenue per user. And so when we look at this, we see, oh, we're adding new players of 40 Thieves. We're adding new players of Canfield. That is generating more revenue total for this category of games. But the total number of users is actually kind of flat and maybe even stagnating. So we're definitely seeing some level of cannibalization of like people shifting over to these other games. Now we're generating more revenue from those other games. That's good. but it implies that we're not doing as good a job of like drawing in new users who are looking for Canfield and like playing our solitaire game. So it'd be healthier if we saw this total number of users going up too. Any questions about arena stuff? Cool. Inhabit. Let's get to this. One metric for Inhabit. So again, we're thinking about something understandable, impressions, clicks, revenue, a ratio or rate per something that we can compare across something.
Yes, engagement time.
We know what this one is. Engagement time, yeah. Engagement per user. Engagement, this is slightly different. I really think it is that engagement time mechanic thing I put in, but we're using engagements per user because that is theoretically what we're going to get paid on. But it's basically clicks per user is all we care about right now. We just want to know that people are interested in the content we're making and clicking. You know, is that user interested in what we have? So our current line in the sand, as we said, is greater than 5% of viewers click. Soccer poll, NBA lineup picker, NBA guesser, MLB batter, NFL playoffs, and our NCAA guesser. So as we've talked about confounding metrics, this is the metric of viewable click-through rate, which seems like it's so simple, is actually pretty, it has a lot of hidden complexity. Because on different sites, it's totally different. Relating to the kinds of users that are on those sites. Contextual matches, so if it's not contextual, people have a really different response to it. Sports seasons obviously matter a lot because if we're not on season for basketball, our viewable click-through rate could be totally different. So this value of viewable click-through rate, you like have to look at a lot of other things to really understand what you're seeing. But these are our factives. Viewable click-through rate, again, we have a dashboard that just shows this. This is a way that we try and understand the contextual relevancy. So you can take one fact, and in this case, we're only looking at Slam Online. We're only looking at the NBA guesser, and these are Slam Online NBA guesser things. But sometimes it just doesn't work, and you get a really low viewable click-through rate. And other times it's like pretty high. And like understanding why and when and where it works is pretty important. So that's really all I wanted to go into for Inhabit. Did you guys have any other questions about Inhabit analytics? Viewable click-through rate. In general, all we care about is someone clicks. It's such a different product than a game. A game makes all its revenue on re-engagement of existing users. You know, retention is the most important thing for arena games. But for Inhabit, the user can't really find this product again. You know, like it has to be just about that immediate interest. And so all of the dashboards that we have for this will be sort of trying to explore this. Now there's a totally different set of analytics that you should be aware of and the reason they exist. So we've been really talking about product analytics, one KPI that's important to evaluate whether a product is successful, and I think we've like really nailed that down. There's a totally different set of things that analytics is incredibly helpful for, which is basically health and warning analytics. So this is this other dashboard, the 103 dashboard that Michael created. And this is primarily just for tracking if something has gone terribly wrong. And so you're not going to see revenue. You know, we do have a starts per user. You know, I think we might have a revenue per user over time. But like primarily what we want to be looking at is something going wrong with one of our top games or one of our top arenas or one of our top products if we just launch something is our plays per user falling off a cliff. So it's
Right, starting from April.
here.
Something
Here?
went wrong starting from April. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's look like
Well, something definitely goes wrong right here. But it's a little weird because I would argue that starts this revenue issue almost is like more a revenue, like an ads issue than it is a user issue, because our users are still there. Our users are still playing. They're still coming back. So that's a good sign. Our revenue just fell, so we have to contact the ads team and figure out what's going on with the revenue. And we also have this user complaints over time, which is really helpful, that you can sort of track how many people are complaining, and then you can split that per game and per arena to say, like, well, are people complaining about crossword? Are they complaining about the latest launch of Toy Chess Mahjong or whatever? So this is just a dashboard that we spend a lot of time focusing on, but it's not a product analytics. It's not about sort of product quality. It's about catching problems before they get too bad. Any questions?
so. All our analytics moved to Power BI. Right?
Yep. So everything's in Power BI now.
Looker will be deprecated.
Looker, I've learned, will continue to exist and will actually continue to be updated, and we could even make new things on it. The only thing we're not going to get is new product updates. But like in general, we're just not continuing to build anything for it or on it. So everything's in Power BI.
When I worked on quiz engine ASCII, I very often looked at analytics for ASCII in Google Analytics.
Yeah.
And it seemed that Google Analytics looks like more for example, I can find data like about operation systems, browsers, about ages about targeting auditory. Michael, maybe you know too. Is possible in Power BI find this information too or no? More deeper information. For example, last time we made one task: calculate speed time, calculate uploading.
I remember
channel.
that one. We don't have that in Power BI, and we don't even officially have it in Google, so we have to calculate it by using side metrics indirectly. It can be organized by DDAs if you really want to, but it will be quite a lengthy task for every time.
We don't have everything. We have devices, and I think we have some demographic info available.
Even demographic is not.
You don't think it's there yet? So a lot of things we're waiting for the DBAs to add to our data cubes.
Because I know our QA activity to use analytics. For example, Alex Grishka sometimes looks at Google Analytics to understand about some problem. And is it urgent bug for us because we found this bug on Edge, for example, browser, and I don't know how many people use Edge browser, how many people use Safari.
Do we not have browser yet? I know we've requested browser
Maybe
info in there,
maybe remember.
but we don't have it yet. A lot of stuff is just waiting, unfortunately. But Google, a lot of it exists in Google, so we could look at Google directly. But better is if we actually processed it, it ended up in our database, and then we could actually look at it here.
Yeah, I remember about one case. Do you remember we made big feature for ASCII, and it's related with the UI. And after this, maybe next week, sales team show showed our product for some client, and some client got problem on iPhone version of 7.0, for example.
Yeah.
But we didn't see that problem when development. We needed to make fixes, but I looked at the analytics and I saw that iPhones with version 7.0, it's very, very low.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very low. But we have to support it.
Because if a client, it's like Jess's phone.
Maybe.
Did you hear that
Maybe.
we just got a copy of Jess's phone for our test
Maybe.
our test set because it always breaks on her phone. Any other questions about this? All right, thanks.
Thank you.